The unconventional proposal. The harsh fluorescent lights of the war room cast long shadows across the faces of Earth's top military brass. Admiral Elena Vega stood at the head of the table, her weathered features a testament to the grueling 5-year conflict humanity had been waging against the Zarkonian Empire. The room was thick with tension as the latest holographic projections flickered to life, showcasing the grim reality of their situation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Vega began, her voice steady despite the weight of her words, "the Zarkonians have pushed us back to our last line of defense in the Orion Arm. If we don't find a way to turn the tide soon, Earth itself will be vulnerable within the month." A chorus of murmurs rippled through the assembled officers. They had all known the situation was dire, but hearing it stated so bluntly sent a chill through even the most hardened veterans. Colonel Jared Chen, head of strategic operations, cleared his throat. "Admiral, with all due respect, we've tried everything in our playbook. Our ships are outgunned, our colonies are falling one by one, and our supply lines are stretched to the breaking point. What options do we have left?" As if on cue, the door to the war room hissed open. All eyes turned to see a disheveled figure stumble in, clutching a datapad like a lifeline. Dr. Samantha Reeves, lead scientist at the Quantum Propulsion Laboratory, looked as if she hadn't slept in days. Her wild eyes darted around the room before settling on Admiral Vega. "I'm sorry for the interruption," she gasped, "but I think I've found a way to win this war." Admiral Vega raised an eyebrow. "Dr. Reeves, this is a closed meeting. Whatever you have can wait until—" "No," Samantha interrupted, her voice cracking with urgency. "It can't wait. Trust me, you're going to want to hear this now." The Admiral studied the scientist for a moment before nodding. "Very well, Doctor. You have 5 minutes." Samantha took a deep breath and approached the holographic display. With a few quick gestures, she brought up a series of complex equations and diagrams. "We've been looking at this all wrong," she began. "We've been trying to match the Zarkonian ship for ship, weapon for weapon. But what if we could turn our greatest weakness into our greatest strength?" Colonel Chen leaned forward, intrigued despite his skepticism. "What are you proposing, Doctor?" "Our FTL drives," Samantha said, her eyes shining with a mix of excitement and fear. "We've always seen them as inferior to the Zarkonian quantum tunneling technology. Ours are slower, less efficient, and leave us vulnerable when we drop out of FTL. But what if we could weaponize those very weaknesses?" A stunned silence fell over the room. It was General Maria Ortiz who finally spoke up, her voice laden with disbelief. "Weaponize our FTL drives? That's insane. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical, not to mention the risk to our own ships." Samantha nodded vigorously. Yes, it's crazy. But hear me out. Our FTL drives work by creating a bubble of warped space-time around the ship, right? When we drop out of FTL, that bubble collapses, causing those gravitational shock waves that the Zarkonians always detect. But what if we could control that collapse? Direct it? She manipulated the hologram, showing a simulation of a human ship approaching the Zarkonian battle fleet. Imagine this. We send a ship on a collision course with an enemy fleet, but instead of impacting, we trigger a controlled collapse of the FTL field at the precise moment of closest approach. The simulation played out, showing the human ship seemingly evaporating in a blinding flash of light. A split second later, a massive gravitational wave rippled outward, tearing the Zarkonian ships apart. The energy released would be equivalent to a small supernova, Samantha explained, her voice hushed. No shields, no hull, nothing we encountered could withstand that kind of localized space-time disruption. The war room erupted into chaos. Officers shouted questions and objections, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of disbelief and desperate hope. Admiral Vega raised her hand, silencing the room with a gesture. "Dr. Reeves," she said slowly, "what you're proposing, it's not just a weapon. It's A game changer, Samantha finished for her. I know it sounds impossible. The engineering challenges alone are staggering. We'd need to completely redesign our FTL drives, develop new control systems, find a way to protect the pilot, if we even use a pilot at all. But I've run the numbers 100 times. It's theoretically possible. Colonel Chen shook his head, his tactical mind already racing with possibilities. The Zarkonians would never see it coming. They've always dismissed our FTL tech as primitive. They wouldn't even recognize it as a threat until it was too late. General Ortiz leaned back in her chair, her face a mask of concern. The ethical implications are troubling, to say the least. We'd essentially be creating suicide ships. And the destructive potential, if this fell into the wrong hands or malfunctioned near a populated world. Which is why this can't leave this room, Admiral Vega said firmly. She fixed each person with a steely gaze. What we've heard here today is beyond classified. If we pursue this, it will be with the utmost secrecy. Samantha fidgeted nervously. There's one more thing, Admiral. To make this work, to have any chance of developing this in time, I need resources, more than I've ever asked for before. And I need the best minds we have. Engineers, physicists, even some of our top pilots to help design the control systems. Admiral Vega was quiet for a long moment, the weight of the decision hanging heavy in the air. Finally, she nodded. You'll have whatever you need, Doctor. I'll pull strings, redirect funds, do whatever it takes. But I need you to understand the gravity of what you're undertaking. The fate of our entire species may rest on this project. Samantha swallowed hard, but her voice was steady when she replied. I understand, Admiral. We won't let you down. As the meeting adjourned, the officers filed out in stunned silence. The enormity of what they had just agreed to was still sinking in. They were about to change the nature of warfare itself, to harness the very fabric of space-time as a weapon. It was a desperate gamble, but in the face of extinction, there was no choice but to roll the dice. Admiral Vega remained behind, staring at the holographic display that still showed the devastating simulation. She thought of all the lives that had been lost, all the worlds that had fallen. And now, they were about to cross a line that could never be uncrossed. May God forgive us for what we're about to do, she whispered to the empty room. As the door closed behind her, the holograms flickered and died, leaving the war room in darkness. But in that darkness, a spark of hope had been kindled, a desperate, dangerous hope that would soon set the galaxy ablaze. In her lab, Dr. Samantha Reeves was already hard at work, her mind racing with calculations and possibilities. She knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, both technical and moral. But as she looked at the equations scrolling across her screen, she felt a thrill of excitement mixed with her fear. They were about to change everything. For better or worse, humanity was taking its first steps towards a future where the very laws of physics would bend to their will. And if they succeeded, the Zarkonians would learn a harsh lesson. Never underestimate the ingenuity of a species with its back against the wall. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Project Lightspeed was born. In secret labs and hidden facilities across the globe, humanity's best and brightest began to work tirelessly, racing against time to turn an impossible idea into a reality that would reshape the stars themselves. The war for survival had entered a new phase, and the universe would never be the same again. Project Lightspeed. The abandoned mining facility on Ganymede, Jupiter's largest moon, had never seen such frenetic activity. What was once a hub for ice mining had been transformed into humanity's most secret and vital research installation. The cavernous main hangar, previously home to massive ice-breaking machinery, now housed a prototype starship unlike any other in human history. Dr. Samantha Reeves stood before the gleaming hull of the XSS Prometheus, her breath forming small clouds in the chilly air. The ship was smaller than a standard battlecruiser, its sleek lines a stark contrast to the bulky warships that made up the bulk of Earth's fleet. But size, in this case, was deceiving. Within that hull lay the potential to change the course of the war, if they could make it work. "Status report," Samantha called out, her voice echoing in the vast space. Chief Engineer Akira Tanaka emerged from an access hatch, his face smudged with grease. "We've successfully integrated the modified FTL core, Doc. But I gotta tell you, this thing is like trying to bottle lightning. The power fluctuations are off the charts." Samantha nodded, unsurprised. "That's to be expected. We're pushing the laws of physics to their breaking point here. Any progress on the containment field?" "Some," Akira replied, wiping his hands on a rag. "Dr. Chen's team has come up with a novel approach using quantum-locked monopoles. It's stabilizing the field, but we're still seeing microfractures in the space-time fabric around the ship." As if on cue, Dr. Li Chen approached, her holographic tablet displaying a dizzying array of equations and simulations. "The good news is, we've increased containment efficiency by 37% since last week. The bad news, we're still looking at a 63% chance of catastrophic failure if we attempt a full power activation." Samantha's jaw tightened. "Not good enough. We need at least 90% reliability before we can even think about field tests." "What about the targeting systems?" A new voice joined the conversation. "That's where I come in, I suppose." Wing Commander Maya Rahimi, formerly the top pilot in Earth's Starfighter Corps, approached the group. Her easy grin belied the intensity in her eyes. "We've made some breakthroughs in predictive algorithms. The onboard AI can now calculate optimal detonation points with 99.98% accuracy, accounting for enemy ship movements and local space-time curvature." "Impressive," Samantha admitted. "But none of it matters if we can't control the collapse of the FTL field." The team fell into a contemplative silence, each lost in their own thoughts. They had been working around the clock for months, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge and engineering. Progress had been made, certainly, but they were still far from their goal. Akira was the first to break the silence. "You know, there might be a way to increase stability. It's risky, but at this point, Akira, I'm open to anything," Samantha said. The engineer took a deep breath. "What if we inversely couple the FTL field with a microsingularity? The gravitational pull could act as an anchor, giving us more control over the field collapse." Dr. Chen's eyes widened. "A microsingularity? Akira, that's insane. The power requirements alone would be astronomical, not to mention the risk of creating a black hole if something goes wrong." I know," Akira said, raising his hands defensively. "But hear me out. We're already dealing with energies beyond anything we've handled before. If we can harness a microsingularity, it could provide the stability we need." Samantha's mind raced, running through calculations and possibilities. It was a crazy idea, but then again, this entire project was built on crazy ideas. "How soon can you have a proposal ready?" Akira blinked, surprised. "You're actually considering it?" "We're running out of time and options," Samantha replied grimly. "The Zarkonians are pushing closer to Earth every day. If there's even a chance this could work, we need to explore it. Get me a detailed plan within 48 hours." As the team dispersed to their respective stations, Samantha felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on her shoulders. They were pushing the boundaries of science further than anyone had dared before, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Over the next few weeks, the facility on Ganymede became a hive of activity. Akira's microsingularity proposal had been approved, and new equipment began arriving daily. The engineering team worked tirelessly to integrate the new systems, while Dr. Chen's physicists ran simulation after simulation, refining their models. Commander Rahimi spent countless hours in the newly constructed flight simulator, working with the AI to perfect the timing and execution of what they had begun calling the light-speed strike. The maneuver required split-second precision, pushing the limits of both human reflexes and artificial intelligence. As the modifications to the Prometheus neared completion, Tension in the facility reached a fever pitch. Everyone knew that the first full power test was approaching, and with it, the moment of truth. The day of the test arrived with little fanfare. The hangar was eerily quiet as technicians made their final checks. Samantha stood in the control room, surrounded by holographic displays showing every aspect of the ship's systems. "All stations, report in," she called out, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. One by one, the team leaders confirmed their readiness. Akira's voice came last, tinged with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "FTL core is hot, Doc. Microsingularity is stable and contained. We're as ready as we'll ever be." Samantha took a deep breath. "All right, let's make history. Begin power-up sequence." The Prometheus hummed to life, its hull gleaming under the harsh lights of the hangar. Streams of data flowed across the screens, showing the ship's systems coming online one by one. "FTL field is forming," Dr. Chen reported. "Containment is holding steady at 92% efficiency. Targeting systems online," Commander Rahimi added. "AI is running final calculations for the test target." The test target in question was an old, decommissioned satellite that had been towed into a stable orbit around Ganymede. If successful, the lightspeed strike would vaporize it instantly. "Approaching critical mass," Akira warned. T-minus 30 seconds to field collapse. The entire control room held its breath as the final seconds ticked away. Samantha's knuckles were white as she gripped the edge of the console. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Initiate. For a split second, nothing seemed to happen. Then, a blinding flash of light erupted from the hangar, so intense that even the heavily shielded windows of the control room darkened automatically. When the light faded, Samantha blinked away the afterimages, her heart pounding. "Status report. Did it work?" There was a moment of stunned silence before the sensors officer found his voice. Target has been completely obliterated. No debris detected. It's just gone." A cheer erupted in the control room, months of tension releasing in a cathartic wave of triumph. Samantha felt tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. They had done it. They had harnessed the power of FTL technology in a way no one had ever dreamed possible. As the celebration continued around her, Samantha's mind was already racing ahead. The test had been a success, yes, but it was only the beginning. Now they needed to refine the technology, to build more ships, to train crews, and they needed to do it all before the Zarkonians discovered what they had created. Hours later, after the initial excitement had died down, and the team had begun the painstaking process of analyzing the test data, Samantha found herself alone in her office. She activated a secure comm channel, and moments later, Admiral Vega's hologram flickered to life. "Dr. Reeves," the Admiral greeted her, a hint of anticipation in her voice. "I take it from the lack of emergency alerts that your test was successful." Samantha nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "More than successful, Admiral. The lightspeed strike exceeded our most optimistic projections. We're still analyzing the data, but preliminary results suggest the yield was nearly 50% higher than anticipated." Admiral Vega's stoic expression cracked, revealing a glimmer of hope. That's incredible news, Doctor. How soon can we begin production?" Samantha's smile faded. "That's the tricky part, Admiral. We can start modifying existing ships immediately, but each conversion will take time. And we'll need to train crews to use this new weapon safely. One mistake, one miscalculation, and we could lose a ship and its entire crew." The Admiral nodded gravely. "I understand the risks, Doctor, but we're out of time. The Zarkonians have broken through our defenses in the Procyon system. At their current rate of advance, they'll reach Earth within 2 months." Samantha felt her blood run cold. 2 months. It wasn't nearly enough time. But it was all they had. "We'll do whatever it takes, Admiral," she said, her voice filled with determination. "I'll have a full report and production timeline on your desk within 24 hours. As the hologram winked out, Samantha leaned back in her chair, the weight of the future pressing down on her. They had created the ultimate weapon, a way to turn humanity's greatest weakness into its greatest strength. But would it be enough? And at what cost? Outside her office window, the prototype Prometheus sat silently in its berth, its sleek hull hiding the incredible power within. It was no longer just a ship. It was hope given form, the physical manifestation of humanity's refusal to go quietly into the night. As Samantha gazed at the ship, a quote from an ancient Greek myth floated through her mind. Prometheus, the titan who stole fire from the gods and gave it to humanity. Prometheus, thief of light, she murmured. Let's hope this fire burns our enemies before it burns us. With a deep breath, she turned back to her computer. There was still so much work to be done, and the fate of Earth, of all humanity, hung in the balance. Project Lightspeed had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. Now came the hard part, using it to win a war against an enemy who had no idea what was coming. The countdown to Earth's final stand had begun. The first strike. The bridge of the ESS Thermopylae hummed with nervous energy as Captain Zara Hendricks studied the holographic display before her. The massive Zarkonian fleet hung in space like a swarm of angry hornets, their sleek, biomechanical ships a stark contrast to the utilitarian designs of the human vessels. "Status report," Zara ordered, her voice steady despite the tension coiling in her gut. Her XO, Commander John Chen, responded promptly. "All systems nominal, Captain. The modified FTL drive is operating within expected parameters. Strike team is prepped and ready." Zara nodded, her eyes never leaving the display. The plan was audacious, perhaps even suicidal, but it was humanity's best hope. After months of frantic preparation and training, Project Lightspeed was about to face its baptism by fire. "Open a channel to the fleet," she commanded. As the comm officer complied, Zara took a deep breath, aware that her next words would be heard by every human ship in the system. "This is Captain Hendricks. You all know what's at stake here. Earth itself hangs in the balance. We've been pushed to the brink, forced to develop weapons that, quite frankly, terrify me. But we're out of options and out of time." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Today, we show the Zarkonians that humanity will not go quietly into the night. We show them that underestimating us was the biggest mistake they ever made. Strike teams, you have your targets. May whatever gods you believe in watch over you. Godspeed, and give 'em hell." As the channel closed, Zara turned to her helm officer. "Take us in, nice and easy. Let's not tip our hand too soon." The Thermopylae and its escorts began to move, slowly closing the distance to the Zarkonian fleet. To any observer, it would have looked like a standard attack formation, albeit a suicidal one given the overwhelming enemy forces. Aboard the Zarkonian flagship, High Commander Vexthor watched the approaching human ships with a mixture of amusement and contempt. "So the primates have finally decided to make their last stand," he chittered to his subordinates. "Prepare to receive their surrender. If they resist, obliterate them." Back on the Thermopylae, tension mounted as they closed to engagement range. Zara's fingers tightened on the arms of her command chair. "Strike Team Alpha, you have a go. All other units, hold position and prepare to support." From the heart of the human formation, 3 ships suddenly accelerated to FTL speeds, but instead of jumping away, they aimed directly for the center of the Zarkonian fleet. Vexthor's compound eyes widened in surprise. "What madness is this? Raise shields. Prepare point defenses." But it was already too late. As the 3 human ships reached their targets, they executed the Lightspeed strike. The controlled collapse of their FTL fields released energy equivalent to multiple supernovas, focused into tight beams of destructive force. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. Zarkonian ships caught in the blast simply ceased to exist, vaporized by forces beyond their comprehension. Those on the periphery were torn apart by gravitational shear, their hulls twisted and shattered. In the space of a few heartbeats, a third of the Zarkonian fleet had been annihilated. On the Thermopyla's bridge, a stunned silence fell as the sensors registered the devastation. It was Commander Chen who finally broke it. "My God," he whispered, "it actually worked." Zara allowed herself a grim smile. "That it did, John. But this fight's far from over. All units, press the attack. Don't let them regroup." The human fleet surged forward, capitalizing on the chaos and confusion in the enemy ranks. Conventional weapons fire joined the occasional lightspeed strike, methodically dismantling the once invincible Zarkonian armada. Aboard his flagship, now trailing plasma and debris, High Commander Vexthor struggled to comprehend what was happening. Impossible, he chittered, mandibles clicking in agitation. Their technology was inferior. How could they have developed such a weapon? His tactical officer, nursing a wound from a ruptured console, replied shakily, "Unknown, High Commander. Our sensors can't even classify the energy signature. It's like they're weaponizing the fabric of space itself." Vexthor's compound eyes narrowed. "Send a signal to the homeworld. Warn them of this new weapon. We must retreat and regroup." But as the order went out, another human strike team zeroed in on the Zarkonian flagship. Vexthor had just enough time to realize his fate before his world dissolved in a blinding flash of light. Hours later, as the last pockets of Zarkonian resistance were mopped up, Captain Hendricks stood in the Thermopyla's observation lounge, staring out at the debris field that had once been a mighty alien fleet. Commander Chen joined her, offering a steaming mug of coffee. "Hell of a day," he said quietly. Zara accepted the mug gratefully. "That it was, John. That it was." She took a sip, savoring the bitter warmth. "Any word on casualties?" Chen nodded, his expression somber. "We lost all 3 ships in the initial strike, as expected. Beyond that, casualties were minimal. The Zarkonians never knew what hit them." 45 souls, Zara murmured. 45 volunteers who gave their lives to save billions." She raised her mug in a silent toast to the fallen. After a moment of respectful silence, Chen spoke again. "Orders from High Command, Captain. We're to proceed to the Proxima Centauri system. Apparently, the Zarkonians are already regrouping for a counterattack." Zara's grip tightened on her mug. "No rest for the weary." "Very well. Alert the fleet. We jump in 30 minutes. As Chen left to carry out her orders, Zara turned back to the viewport. The enormity of what they had done, what they would continue to do, weighed heavily on her. They had changed the face of warfare forever, unleashing a power that, in the wrong hands, could devastate entire star systems. But as she watched her fleet prepare for the jump to Proxima Centauri, Zara felt a flicker of hope. For the first time since the war began, humanity had a real chance at victory. They had taken the Zarkonians' greatest advantage, their superior FTL technology, and turned it into their greatest weakness. The next few days were a whirlwind of battles and rapid deployments. News of the human victory spread like wildfire through both fleets. Zarkonian morale plummeted as reports of the new space-rending weapon reached their forces. Many ships surrendered rather than face the terrifying prospect of being erased from existence in a flash of light. Human forces, on the other hand, fought with renewed vigor. The tide of war had turned, and they pressed their advantage relentlessly. System after system fell back into human hands as the Zarkonians were pushed back on all fronts. A week after the initial battle, Captain Hendricks found herself summoned to a top-secret briefing on Luna Base. As she entered the secure conference room, she was surprised to see not only military brass, but also a familiar face from Project Lightspeed. "Dr. Reeves," Zara greeted the scientist. "I didn't expect to see you here." Samantha Reeves offered a tired smile. "Captain Hendricks, I've heard good things about your performance out there. Please, have a seat. We have much to discuss." As Zara sat, Admiral Vega called the meeting to order. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'll cut to the chase. The Lightspeed strike has exceeded our wildest expectations. We've pushed the Zarkonians back further in 1 week than we had in 5 years of conventional warfare. A ripple of satisfaction went through the room, but the Admiral's grim expression quelled any celebration. However, our success has not gone unnoticed. We've intercepted Zarkonian communications, indicating that they're fast-tracking development of countermeasures. Moreover, there are complications with continued use of the lightspeed strike. He nodded to Dr. Reeves, who stood and activated a holographic display. As you can see, she began, pointing to a complex graph. Repeated use of the lightspeed strike in a localized area is causing increasing instability in the fabric of space-time. We're seeing micro-fissures forming, little tears in reality itself. A stunned silence fell over the room. It was Captain Hendricks who voiced what everyone was thinking. Are you saying we're ripping holes in the universe? Samantha nodded gravely. In a manner of speaking, yes. So far, the fissures have been small and short-lived. But if we continue at our current pace, we risk causing permanent damage. Damage that could, theoretically, propagate uncontrollably. Admiral Vega leaned forward, his voice low and intense. You understand what this means. We have a window, a narrow one, to end this war decisively, before the Zarkonians can adapt, and before we risk tearing reality apart. Zara felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders. What's the plan, sir? A strike at the heart of the Zarkonian Empire, the Admiral replied. We've located their homeworld. Captain Hendricks, you'll lead a task force. Your mission is to penetrate their defenses and deliver an ultimatum. Unconditional surrender, or face the full might of our new weapon. The room erupted in heated discussion. Some argued that they should simply destroy the Zarkonian homeworld, ending the threat once and for all. Others insisted that such an act would be tantamount to genocide. As the debate raged, Zora caught Dr. Reeves' eye. The scientist's expression was haunted, burdened by the weight of the power she had unleashed upon the universe. Finally, Admiral Vega called for order. Enough. We are not butchers. We will offer the Zarkonians a chance to end this war peacefully. But make no mistake, if they refuse, we will do what is necessary to ensure the survival of our species. He turned to Captain Hendricks. You ship out in 12 hours. Choose your task force carefully. The fate of 2 species may well rest in your hands. As the meeting adjourned, Zora approached Dr. Reeves. Doctor, a word. Samantha nodded, falling into step beside the captain as they left the conference room. What's on your mind, Captain? Zara was quiet for a moment, collecting her thoughts. I need to know, if it comes down to it, if we have to use the lightspeed strike on their homeworld, what are we really risking? Not just to them, but to the fabric of space itself. Samantha's face was grim. Honestly, we don't know. We're in uncharted territory here. Best case scenario, we cause localized spatial anomalies that repair themselves over time. Worst case, she shook her head. We could trigger a cascade effect, a chain reaction of reality breakdown that spreads across the galaxy. Maybe further. Zara felt a chill run down her spine. Then we'd better make damn sure it doesn't come to that. As they reached the end of the corridor, Samantha placed a hand on Zora's arm. Captain, whatever happens out there, remember that we're all counting on you. Not just humanity, but the Zarkonians too, whether they know it or not. The power you wield, it's not just a weapon. It's judgment on a cosmic scale. Zara nodded solemnly. I understand, Doctor. I'll do whatever it takes to end this war, but I won't forget the cost. We set out to save humanity. Let's hope we don't damn ourselves in the process. With a final exchange of grim smiles, they parted ways. Captain Hendricks strode towards the spaceport, her mind already racing with preparations for the mission ahead. In 12 hours, she would lead humanity's final push, carrying with her the power to end a war, or possibly to end everything. As her shuttle lifted off from Luna's surface, Zara gazed down at the blue marble of Earth. Everything she had ever known, everyone she had ever loved, hung in the balance. With a silent prayer to whatever forces might be listening, she steeled herself for the challenges ahead. The final battle for the fate of two species, and perhaps the universe itself, was about to begin. Escalation and innovation. The vast expanse of space around Zarkon Prime, the homeworld of the Zarkonian Empire, buzzed with frantic activity. Thousands of ships, from tiny fighters to massive dreadnoughts, formed a defensive grid so dense it almost blotted out the stars. On the planet's surface, powerful energy shields hummed to life, their iridescent glow visible even from orbit. Supreme Overlord Cathak stood in the war room of the Imperial Palace, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic displays surrounding him. Reports flooded in from all corners of the Empire, each more dire than the last. "My lord," his chief strategist chittered nervously, "the humans have broken through our lines in the Orion Spur. 3 more colony worlds have fallen in the last solar cycle." Thax's mandibles clicked in agitation. How have these primates suddenly become so powerful? Our technology, our tactics, they were superior in every way. A scientist stepped forward, her exoskeleton pale with stress. "Supreme Overlord, we've analyzed the data from the destroyed fleets. The humans, they've weaponized their inferior FTL drives. They're collapsing localized areas of spacetime, creating destruction on a scale we've never seen before." The war room fell silent, the implications sinking in. Thax's voice was barely a whisper when he spoke. "Can we replicate it?" The scientist shook her head. "Not quickly, my lord. Our FTL technology is fundamentally different. It would take years, maybe decades, to." She was cut off as alarms blared throughout the complex. The holographic displays flickered, showing a massive energy spike at the edge of the system. "Impossible," the chief strategist gasped. "They found us. The humans are here." Aboard the ESS Thermopyle, Captain Zora Hendricks watched as her task force dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Zarkonian home system. Despite the gravity of the situation, she couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The alien world before them was beautiful, its rings and moons forming a celestial dance that put Saturn to shame. "Status report," she ordered, pushing aside her wonder to focus on the task at hand. Commander Chen responded promptly. "All ships present and accounted for, Captain. FTL drives are cycling down. Sensors are detecting massive energy signatures from the planet and surrounding space. They've mobilized everything they have." Zara nodded grimly. "As expected, they know what's coming." She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what came next. "Open a channel to the Zarkonian command. It's time to deliver our ultimatum." As the communications officer worked to establish a link, Dr. Samantha Reeves approached Zora's command chair. The scientist had insisted on joining this mission, arguing that her expertise might be needed if anything went wrong with the Lightspeed strike technology. "Captain," Samantha said quietly, "I've been analyzing the sensor data from our approach. The space-time distortions we've been causing, they're more severe than we anticipated. If we have to use the strike here, the consequences could be catastrophic." Zara's jaw tightened. "Understood, Doctor. Let's hope it doesn't come to that." She turned her attention to the main view screen as it flickered to life, revealing the alien visage of Supreme Overlord Cathax. "Zarkonian leadership," Zora began, her voice steady and clear. "I am Captain Zora Hendricks of the Earth Space Navy. I come with an offer of peace and a warning." Thax's compound eyes narrowed. "Peace? You dare speak of peace while threatening our homeworld?" "We don't want to destroy you," Zora continued, "but we will if we must. You've seen what our new weapon can do. Even now, it's targeted on your world and your fleets. Surrender, end this war, and we can work towards a future where both our species coexist." The Zarkonian leader's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. "You underestimate us, human. We have faced extinction before and survived. We will not bow to your threats." As if to punctuate his words, the Zarkonian fleet began to move, adopting an aggressive formation. Zara sighed. She had hoped, perhaps naively, that the show of force would be enough. Very well. You leave us no choice. All ships, prepare for. Her order was cut short as alarms blared across the bridge. Captain, Chen shouted. Massive energy spike from the planet's surface. The view screen shifted, showing a colossal beam of energy erupting from Zarkon Prime. It lanced out into space, striking one of the human frigates. For a moment, the ship's shields held, glowing bright enough to rival a star. Then, with a silent flash, the frigate disintegrated. Evasive maneuvers. Zara ordered. All ships, scatter formation. Dr. Reeves, what the hell was that? Samantha was already at a sensor station, her fingers flying over the controls. It's incredible. They've somehow harnessed the energy of their planet's core. It's like a massive, planet-wide FTL drive, but weaponized differently than ours. As the human fleet scrambled to avoid the devastating beams, the Zarkonian ships pressed their attack. Energy weapons and missiles filled space, creating a deadly lattice of destruction. Return fire, Zara commanded. Conventional weapons only. Hold the strikes in reserve. The battle quickly devolved into chaos. Human ingenuity and tactical flexibility clashed against Zarkonian technological superiority and home field advantage. Ships on both sides fell to the onslaught, adding their debris to the growing field of destruction. On the Thermopyla's bridge, Zara gripped her command chair as the ship shuddered under another near miss. Status on the enemy weapon. It's charging again, Chen reported. At this rate, we'll lose half the fleet before we can get close enough for a strike. Zara's mind raced, searching for a solution. They couldn't retreat. This was their one chance to end the war. But a full-scale strike on the planet could have unimaginable consequences. Dr. Reeves, she called out, you said their weapon is like a planet-wide FTL drive. Could we use that somehow? Samantha's eyes widened as she caught on to Zara's train of thought. Maybe, yes. If we could synchronize a lightspeed strike with the discharge of their weapon, we might be able to create a feedback loop. It would neutralize their attack and potentially overload their systems, without destroying the planet. Zara pressed. In theory, yes. But the timing would have to be perfect. Milliseconds off, and we could trigger a catastrophic collapse of the local space-time continuum. Zara nodded grimly. It's a risk we'll have to take. Chen, get our best pilot on this. We'll only have one shot. As the crew rushed to implement the desperate plan, the battle continued to rage. The human fleet, though bloodied, had managed to push closer to Zarkon Prime. But with each passing moment, more ships fell to the planet's devastating weapon. Enemy weapon is charging again, Chen reported. 30 seconds to discharge. Zara's voice was steel as she gave the order. All ships, fall back to minimum safe distance. Thermopyla will execute the strike. Pilot, on my mark. The bridge fell silent save for the beeping of consoles and the distant rumble of weapons fire. Zara watched the countdown, her heart pounding in her ears. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark. The Thermopyla's FTL drive screamed to life, pushing the ship to the very edge of physics. At the exact moment, the Zarkonian weapon fired. Zara gave the order. Execute lightspeed strike. For a heartbeat, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality itself seemed to bend. The beam from Zarkon Prime met the collapsing FTL field of the Thermopyla in a cataclysmic explosion of light and energy. Space twisted and warped, the fabric of the universe straining under forces it was never meant to contain. On the planet's surface, the massive FTL weapon complex exploded as the feedback loop overwhelmed its systems. Earthquakes rocked Zarkon Prime as the very core of the planet rebelled against the energies being channeled through it. Aboard the Thermopyla, chaos reigned. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks, and the hull groaned under impossible stresses. Zara clung to her chair, shouting orders that were lost in the cacophony. And then, As suddenly as it began, it was over. The silence that followed was deafening. Zara blinked, her ears ringing, and tried to make sense of the scene before her. The view screen showed a transformed battlefield. Where once there had been thousands of Zarkonian ships, now there was only debris. Zarkon Prime still hung in space, but its once vibrant rings were shattered, and angry red fissures crisscrossed its surface. "Report," Zara croaked, her voice hoarse. Chen, sporting a nasty gash on his forehead, checked his console. "Weapons, neutralize. Zarkonian fleet is gone. But Captain, we're detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the system. Whatever we did, it's having some serious side effects." Dr. Reeves stumbled to a sensor station, her face pale. "The space-time fissures. They're spreading. If we don't do something, this entire star system could collapse into a singularity." Before Zara could respond, the comm system crackled to life. Supreme Overlord Kithax's voice, filled with a mixture of awe and terror, came through. What have you done? Our weapon, our fleet. How?" Zara straightened in her chair, ignoring the pain that lanced through her body. "We did what we had to do. Your weapon has been neutralized. Your fleet is gone. But your world still stands. Surrender now, Supreme Overlord, or we cannot guarantee the safety of your people or anyone else in this system." There was a long pause, filled only by the beeping of alarms and the groans of stressed metal. Finally, Kithax's voice returned, subdued and defeated. We surrender. Unconditionally. Please, help us save our world." As the reality of victory settled over the bridge, Zara turned to Dr. Reeves. "Can we stop it? Can we save this system?" Samantha's fingers flew over her console, running simulations and calculations. "Maybe. If we use the remaining ships with lightspeed strike capability, we might be able to create a stabilizing field. It would be like stitching the fabric of space-time back together." Zara nodded. "Do it. And get me a channel to Earth. We're going to need every scientist and engineer we can get our hands on." She paused, looking out at the wounded alien world. "The war's over. Now comes the hard part, making sure we all survive the peace." As orders were relayed and ships moved into position, Zara allowed herself a moment of reflection. They had won, but at what cost? They had unleashed forces beyond their full understanding, nearly destroying an entire star system in the process. The coming days and weeks would be crucial, not just for stabilizing the Zarkonian home system, but for establishing a new order in the galaxy. Humanity and Zarkonians would have to work together to contain the damage they had wrought and to ensure that the awesome power of weaponized FTL technology was never used again. As the Thermopylae limped into position to begin the delicate process of repairing the fabric of spacetime, Zara couldn't help but wonder. In their quest to save humanity, had they opened a Pandora's box that could never be closed? The war was over, but the real challenges were just beginning. A new era of warfare and peace. The observation deck of the newly christened Harmony Station offered a breathtaking view of Zarkon Prime. 5 years had passed since the fateful battle that ended the war, and the planet below bore the scars of that day. Massive fissures, now sealed with advanced terraforming technology, crisscrossed the surface like silver threads. The once majestic rings had been reduced to a sparse, glittering belt. Admiral Zara Hendricks, her captain's uniform exchanged for the more ornate attire of her new rank, stood at the viewport. Beside her, Supreme Counselor Thax, formerly Supreme Overlord, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "It is still strange," Thax mused, "to see our world this way. Change, wounded, yet alive. There were times I thought we would not survive." Zara nodded, her expression solemn. "There were times I thought none of us would survive. The space-time rifts nearly." She was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Samantha Reeves, now head of the Joint Species Scientific Council. The scientist's hair had gone prematurely gray, a testament to the stress of the past 5 years. Sorry I'm late, Samantha said, slightly out of breath. The latest data from the Proxima Centauri containment zone just came in. I wanted to review it before our meeting. Zara raised an eyebrow. Good news, I hope. Samantha's tired face broke into a small smile. Actually, yes. The rifts are stabilizing faster than we projected. At this rate, we might be able to begin controlled research in the zone within a year. Fax's compound eyes widened. Truly, that is, most welcome news. Perhaps we can finally begin to understand the forces we so recklessly unleashed. The three of them turned back to the viewport, each lost in their own thoughts. The station rotated slowly, bringing Earth into view, a blue marble hanging in the void, now sharing its orbit with Zarkon Prime in a carefully engineered dance. Sometimes I still can't believe we pulled it off, Zora murmured, moving an entire planet. It was necessary, Kfax replied. With our world's core destabilized by the weapon, and your solar system affected by the rifts, bringing our planets together was the only way to ensure long-term survival for both species. Samantha nodded, and in doing so, we've advanced our understanding of gravity manipulation and large-scale FTL applications by centuries. Funny how necessity drives innovation. A comfortable silence fell over the trio as they contemplated the view. It was Zora who finally spoke. We should head to the council chamber. The others will be waiting. As they made their way through the station's curved corridors, they passed humans and Zarkonians working side by side. 5 years ago, such a sight would have been unthinkable. Now, it was a common occurrence on Harmony Station and in the joint colonies springing up throughout both species' territories. The council chamber was a marvel of collaborative engineering. Designed to accommodate the physiological needs of both species, it featured adaptive seating, atmospheric controls, and holographic interfaces that could be customized on the fly. As Zara, Kithax, and Samantha took their seats, the other council members filed in. Humans and Zarkonians, military leaders and civilians, scientists and diplomats, all brought together by the shared trauma and responsibility of the war's aftermath. Admiral Vega, now serving as the human representative to the Joint Governance Council, called the meeting to order. Thank you all for coming. We have several items on the agenda today, but first, I believe Dr. Reeves has an update for us. Samantha stood, activating the central holographic display. As I was telling Admiral Hendricks and Counselor Kfax, we've made significant progress in stabilizing the Proxima Centauri containment zone. The space-time rifts are healing faster than anticipated, thanks in large part to the combined efforts of our scientific teams. Murmurs of approval rippled through the chamber. The containment zones, areas of space where the fabric of reality had been torn by the use of weaponized FTL technology, had been a constant source of concern since the war's end. However, Samantha continued, her tone growing serious, we're still detecting anomalous energy readings from the center of the zone. It's possible that a micro-singularity has formed, one that our current technology can't fully analyze. Kfax leaned forward, his antennae twitching with interest. Could this singularity pose a threat? At the moment, no, Samantha replied. It appears to be stable. But its very existence raises questions about the long-term consequences of our actions. We may have changed the fundamental nature of space in that region. Admiral Vega's expression was grim. All the more reason to continue our efforts to understand and contain these phenomena. We can't risk another incident like the Arcturus collapse. A somber silence fell over the room. The Arcturus collapse, a catastrophic chain reaction of space-time rifts that had consumed an entire star system, was a stark reminder of the dangers they still faced. Zara cleared her throat. This brings us to our next item of discussion, the Omega Protocols. The tension in the room ratcheted up several notches. The Omega Protocols were a set of emergency measures designed to prevent the misuse of FTL technology as a weapon. They were also incredibly controversial. I've reviewed the latest draft, Kfax said, his voice carefully neutral. The proposal to establish a joint task force with the authority to neutralize any unauthorized FTL weapons research is concerning. It could be seen as an infringement on sovereignty. I understand your concerns, Counselor, Zara replied. But we've seen the devastation this technology can cause. We can't risk another war, or even a rogue state getting their hands on it. The task force would answer to this council, with full transparency and oversight. The debate that followed was heated but respectful. Both humans and Zarkonians had learned the hard way that cooperation was not just beneficial, but necessary for survival. In the end, a compromise was reached. The task force would be established, but with additional checks and balances to prevent abuse of power. As the meeting wound down, Admiral Vega brought up the final item on the agenda. Now, onto a more positive note, the Genesis Project. Dr. Reeves, if you would. Samantha's tired face lit up with excitement as she manipulated the holographic display. A star system appeared, with a dozen planets orbiting a stable binary star. Thanks to our advances in FTL and terraforming technology, we've identified a system that could support colonies of both our species, she explained. More importantly, it's located in a region of space with minimal damage from the war. A fresh start, if you will. The council members leaned in, their earlier tension forgotten as they examined the projection. Zara felt a flutter of hope in her chest. This was why they had fought so hard, why they continued to work together despite the challenges. A chance for a better future. The Genesis Project represents more than just a new colony, Kathak said, his voice filled with emotion. It is a symbol of what we can achieve together. A chance to build something untainted by the mistakes of our past. Admiral Vega nodded in agreement. Well said, Counselor. I move that we fast-track the Genesis Project, making it a priority for both our species. All in favor. The vote was unanimous. As the meeting adjourned, Zara found herself once again on the observation deck, gazing out at the stars. Samantha joined her, the scientist's earlier excitement tempered by exhaustion. Quite a day, Samantha remarked. Sometimes I wonder if we'll ever really recover from what we've done. The rifts, the collapsed systems, the changes we've made to the very fabric of space. Zara placed a comforting hand on her friend's shoulder. We'll recover. It'll take time, and we'll carry the scars, but we'll get there. Look how far we've come already. They stood in companionable silence for a moment before Samantha spoke again. You know, when I first proposed weaponizing FTL technology, I never imagined it would lead to this. A joint council, shared colonies, moving entire planets. It's like something out of science fiction. Zara chuckled. Sometimes I think if you told our past selves what the future held, they'd never believe it. They used FTL for aka would probably be the reaction. As if on cue, a group of human and Zarkonian children ran past, laughing and playing some sort of zero-gravity game in the observation deck's lower gravity field. It was a stark reminder of how much had changed and what they were fighting to protect. We've made mistakes, Zara said softly. Terrible, universe-altering mistakes. But we've also achieved incredible things, found strengths we never knew we had. Samantha nodded, her gaze fixed on the children. You know, I've been thinking about the singularity we detected in the Proxima Zone. It's terrifying, yes, but it's also fascinating. A doorway to who knows what. Careful, Doctor, Zara teased. That's how we got into this mess in the first place, pushing boundaries we didn't fully understand. True, Samantha conceded, but it's also how we'll move forward. We just need to be smarter about it this time. More careful, and we need to do it together. As they watched, a Zarkonian ship gracefully docked with the station, its organic lines a striking contrast to the angular human vessels nearby. 5 years ago, such a sight would have sparked panic. Now, it was routine. You know, Zora mused, for all the horror and destruction, I can't help but think that in some ways, the war made us better. Both our species, we've learned to work together, to see past our differences. We're reaching for the stars not as conquerors, but as explorers and guardians." Samantha smiled, a glimmer of her old enthusiasm shining through. "Well, when you put it that way, maybe we did use FTL for something worthwhile after all." As they turned to leave, Zora cast one last look at the view outside. The stars seemed to shine a little brighter, the future a little more promising. They had a long way to go, challenges to face and mistakes to rectify. But they would face them together, two species united by a shared past and a common goal. The war was over. The real adventure, the journey of discovery, cooperation, and growth, was just beginning. And thanks to the very technology that had nearly destroyed them, the universe was wide open, waiting to be explored. Zara smiled to herself. They had used FTL to wage war. Now they would use it to forge a lasting peace. And who knew what wonders, or challenges, awaited them in the vast, star-studded ocean of space. Whatever came next, they would face it together, human and Zarkonian, united in their quest to understand the universe and their place within it. The future, with all its uncertainties and possibilities, beckoned, and they were ready to answer its call.